firstly, for 24 and 25, the government acknowledged the additional costs of disability and also the rising costs for the general public on low income and energy prices. So as we know, they applied once-off differential winter payments, including a once-off cost of disability. And in 26, of course, it was reasonable for people to expect it because it's very expensive at winter, and particularly for disabled people with energy, charging equipment, everything from the additional cost of food and transport. Everything is way more expensive for disabled people. For example, we can't just jump on every bus, so therefore people are paying for taxis when everybody else is using general transport. Those of us who have to buy vehicles are paying treble what anybody else is. And the irony is that, as we know, the majority of disabled people live in poverty. So it was very, very distressing for many people and upsetting that so many disabled people were ignored in this way by the 2026 budget. And what's really interesting is when there was criticism around once-off payments, the government at the time were annoyed with that criticism because they weren't permanent payments. And look at what has happened. People are now left with additional winter supports as a consequence of this once-off approach. So we are calling for the restoration of what people have become used to in the last few years. And we want an emergency cost of disability payment.
And on the 20th of February, a coalition of disability campaign groupers are going to come together to protest. Do you think you'll see any change from that?
Well, it's very disappointing that the government is putting that on disabled people and our allies and the organisations that we work with to have to gather in the winter, in the freezing weather, having to organise transport. I've already explained it's inaccessible. So many people don't have sufficient personal assistance service hours, so we'll have to rely on support of friends and family to enable them to get there, to travel, to try and draw attention to this and to highlight it. Now, just also, many disabled people have been contacting our local representatives and asking them, to make representation to the cabinet to reverse that decision and to put an emergency once-off payment of €400. It's not a lot. And I suppose we've been also asking the government that when they do this as a once-off or going forward for a more permanent cost of disability, that it will represent the needs of disabled people, that it's not about just disabled people on social welfare payments like the disability allowance, but it's also those of us who are working, because the state's own Indicon report in 2021 clearly evidences that the cost of disability and that's a consequence of our impairment needs, but also the barriers we face, the structural barriers. It's between €444 and €555 a week. So this call is for now, and while the state works out how to give a permanent cost of disability, is to ask for this once-off payment. So we're hoping, to be honest, what I would love is that the cabinet would say, listen, the representation is strong and, disabled people are really clear on this, and there's sufficient evidence from our own data as well as what's coming through both from us as individuals and representative organisations, that really, we can address this, we can give this once-off payment, and we want to make sure that it's done through tax credits for those who are working, as well as through the pathway of social protection for those who are in receipt of social protection income, such as the disability allowance. So we're hoping, and we're really calling on as many disabled people and supporters and allies to join us on the 28th of February at the Garden of Remembrance at 1 p.m.
And have you got a sense of people on the ground that are really struggling without this payment this winter?
Absolutely. The Clare Leader Forum, as you know, is a disabled people's organisation, and lots of people have been engaging with us. And you know the phrase, um, you know, heat or eat. And people are coming to me and saying, I've got loans, I'm eating less, I'm putting off bills, part paying bills. I mean, or going, maybe, I would have encouraged people to maybe access supports through other organisations like St. Vincent de Paul. In my opinion, it's not on. If the state did not have the evidence, its own evidence, back in 2021 of the additional cost of disability, then yes, they could argue that, that it may not be reasonable. They've also ignored, like 1,400 once-off payments were made in 24 and 25, and nothing in 26. So it's outrageous. So we're really asking the government to be compassionate, to be empathic, and to really think about, provide this once-off payment now, and then let's work together to achieve the permanent cost of disability, which has been promised in this programme for government and in the next budget.